Single mom sat alone at a wedding, the CEO whispered. Pretend I'm your husband tonight. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The ballroom glittered with golden light, chandeliers shimmering like captured stars. Laughter rippled across the crowd, the sound of champagne glasses clinking beneath the soft melody of a live band. At a table tucked near the back, Lena Brooks sat perfectly still, trying to make herself invisible. Her dress was borrowed from a friend, a pale blue thing with a tiny tear at the hem she had stitched herself. She pressed her hands in her lap, hiding the calluses from her second job at the diner. Everywhere she looked, couples were dancing, holding hands, leaning close. She should have left earlier, but it was her cousin's wedding, and she had promised to stay through dinner. Still, it stung the glances, the whispers. A few guests at the next table gave her that look, half pity, half curiosity, as if wondering why a woman her age would sit alone at a wedding. Her breath caught when a man suddenly stopped beside her table. A tall figure in a charcoal suit, his tie loosened, his dark hair slightly tousled from the night's heat. His presence drew the air from the room for just a second. Without asking, he pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. Lena blinked in confusion. "I think you have the wrong table," she whispered. The man leaned closer, his tone low, calm, commanding. "Pretend I am your husband tonight," he said. Her heart stuttered. "I am sorry, what?" He gave a faint smile, the kind that looked practiced but tired. "Everyone in this room is watching. You do not want their pity, and I do not want their questions. So, for the next few hours, we help each other." She looked around the stares, the whispers, the familiar sting of being the odd one out. Something in his steady gaze told her this was not a joke. Against every instinct, she nodded slowly. "Fine," she murmured. "But you are buying me dessert." His laugh was quiet, genuine. "Deal." As the music swelled again, he extended his hand. "Then Mrs. Cole, would you dance with me?" Her pulse jumped at the name. "Cole?" she repeated. "Yes," he said simply. "Ethan Cole." The name rang faintly in her memory. Cole Holdings, one of the biggest event corporations in New York. This was his wedding venue, his business. And yet here he was, sitting beside a single mom who could barely afford rent. Lena hesitated, then took his hand. His palm was warm, steady, almost reassuring. They stepped onto the dance floor, moving among the glitter and perfume. For a moment, she forgot about the unpaid bills, the babysitter waiting at home, the ache of loneliness she carried everywhere. When the song ended, Ethan leaned close again and said quietly, "You are a natural at pretending." She smiled faintly. "You are not so bad yourself, Mr. CEO." He looked startled, then amused. "You knew?" "Maybe I read too many business magazines during lunch breaks," she teased softly. Something in his eyes shifted, then curiosity, maybe admiration. But before he could reply, a photographer called out, "Mr. Cole, a picture, please, with your lovely wife." Lena froze. Ethan only smiled wider, his arm wrapping gently around her shoulders. "Just smile," he murmured. "No one will ever know." The flash went off, and in that single burst of light, neither of them could tell where the pretending began or where it might end. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Lena's small apartment in Queens. The city was already awake, honking cars, barking dogs, a neighbor arguing over rent. Lena sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold long ago. The wedding photos were everywhere on social media. Her cousin had tagged her in one, and there it was, Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO, standing beside her with his arm lightly around her shoulder. The caption read, "Unexpected couple of the night." She exhaled, half laughing, half mortified. "Great," she muttered. "Now the internet thinks I am married to a millionaire." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You played your role perfectly. I owe you dessert. EC." She stared at the screen, then shook her head. Unbelievable. But she typed back anyway. "How did you even get my number?" The reply came fast. "I own the venue, and the catering company. And technically, the guest list." She rolled her eyes, trying not to smile. "You are lucky. I am not calling the police." "Then let me buy you coffee before you do." Hours later, she found herself sitting at a corner table in a quiet cafe downtown. Ethan arrived exactly on time, carrying 2 cups of coffee and that same calm expression that had thrown her off the night before. "You really came," he said, handing her a cup. "I wanted to make sure you were not some wedding stalker," she replied. He smiled, amused. "Fair, but I have a proposition that might make up for last night." Lena crossed her arms. "You are not going to ask me to pretend to be your wife again, are you?" He paused, thoughtful. "Actually, something close." She almost choked on her coffee. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious," Ethan said. "My mother has heart complications. Her doctors warned that too much emotional stress could trigger another episode. The only thing she has been asking me lately is when I am going to settle down. She believes I am already married. If I correct her now, it could complicate things." Lena stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or be offended. "So, you want me to lie to your mother? I want you to help me keep her calm. 6 weeks. That is all I ask. I will pay you for your time, and I will cover your son's medical expenses." Her jaw tightened. "You did your research." He nodded once. "I had to know who I was asking." Silence stretched between them. She thought of her little boy, Noah, asleep last night with a mild fever because she could not afford another clinic visit. The rent due next week. The half-written resignation letter on her desk at work. Pride battled desperation until pride finally lost. "What are the rules?" she asked quietly. Ethan leaned back. "We draw lines. You do not fall for me. I do not interfere with your personal life. We attend a few family dinners, a charity gala, maybe one photo shoot. After that, you walk away with a cleared hospital bill and a new job if you want it." Lena laughed softly. "That sounds like the worst kind of fairy tale." He smiled. "Then we are both safe, because I do not believe in fairy tales either." He slid a folder across the table. Inside, neatly printed, was a short contract, simple, direct, almost businesslike. At the bottom, her name was already typed, waiting for a signature. Lena traced the edge of the paper with her finger. "What happens if someone finds out it is fake?" "Then it becomes real faster than either of us expected," Ethan said dryly. For a moment, she studied his face, the calm confidence, the trace of exhaustion behind his perfect composure. He was the kind of man who looked like he had everything, yet his eyes carried a loneliness she recognized all too well. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "Fine, 6 weeks." He extended his hand. "Then we have a deal, Mrs. Cole." Her pulse jumped at the title, but she shook his hand anyway. "For 6 weeks only." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is all it takes to make the world believe." As she walked out into the crisp autumn air, Lena felt both lighter and heavier at once. She had just agreed to become the fake wife of a billionaire. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that maybe this was not the worst mistake she would ever make. The following Friday evening, Lena stood in front of a full-length mirror inside a suite that looked more like a palace than a hotel room. 2 stylists circled her like hawks, fixing every strand of hair, straightening the satin folds of a cream-colored dress that shimmered under the chandelier. She had never seen so many mirrors in one place, and each reflection made her more nervous. "Relax," the younger stylist said kindly. "You look stunning." Lena forced a smile. "That is what everyone says right before disaster strikes." The woman laughed. "Mr. Cole is waiting downstairs. You are going to be perfect." When the door closed, Lena stared at herself again. She barely recognized the woman in the reflection. The cheap blue dress from her cousin's wedding was gone, replaced by a gown worth more than 3 months of her rent. She touched the necklace that hung at her collarbone, single pearl that Ethan had said belonged to his late grandmother. A family heirloom, he had called it. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Ethan stepped inside, dressed in a black tuxedo that looked like it had been made for him. His eyes met hers for a moment, steady and unreadable. "Ready?" he asked. "I have a bad feeling that I am about to trip in front of your entire family," she said. He smiled slightly. "If you do, I will trip first. Then we will make it a duet." She laughed despite herself, and for the first time since signing the contract, the tension eased. Downstairs, the Cole family mansion buzzed with activity. Dozens of guests filled the grand hall, soft jazz playing under the murmur of conversation. Lena held Ethan's arm as they entered. Heads turned, and whispers followed like a breeze. A graceful older woman approached, her silver hair pinned perfectly, her expression soft but sharp. Ethan's voice warmed. "Mother." The woman looked from Ethan to Lena, her smile cautious but kind. "So this is the mysterious wife you have been hiding from me." Lena swallowed hard and extended her hand. "It is such an honor to finally meet you, Mrs. Cole." "Please, call me Margaret," the woman said. Her hand lingered on Lena's arm. "You are lovely, dear. You have kind eyes." Lena felt her throat tighten. Kind eyes. It was something her own mother used to say. Dinner unfolded like a delicate performance. Crystal glasses, polished silverware, waiters moving like ghosts. Ethan led every conversation effortlessly, steering questions away from anything personal. Lena followed his lead, smiling when needed, nodding when unsure. Halfway through dessert, Margaret reached across the table and said softly, "Ethan, darling, your father would have been so proud to see you finally settled." The room fell quiet. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lena sensed the unspoken grief and gently placed her hand over his. It was meant as comfort, but the contact made him glance at her, surprised. His eyes softened for the briefest second. Later that night, after the guests had left and the lights dimmed, Ethan escorted Lena out to the garden terrace. The city stretched far below, glittering like a sea of stars. "You handled yourself well," he said quietly. "I did not faint, spill anything, or accidentally offend your mother," she said. "So yes, I am calling that a success." He chuckled. "She likes you. That is more than I can say for most people I have introduced to her." Lena leaned on the stone railing, looking out at the skyline. "Why do I get the feeling this is not just about your mother?" Ethan hesitated. "It is complicated." "You mean lonely," she said softly. He looked at her, caught off guard. Maybe both. A cool wind passed between them, carrying the faint scent of roses. For a moment they stood in silence, two strangers pretending to be married, yet sharing something neither could name. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. "We have another event next week, a charity gala. My assistant will send you the details." "Another round of pretending?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Yes, but this time you get to choose your dress." As he walked her to the waiting car, Lena glanced back at the mansion glowing behind them. Somewhere between duty and deception, a fragile warmth had begun to form. She told herself it was just gratitude, just professionalism, just part of the act. But deep down, she knew pretending was getting harder with every breath. The night of the charity gala arrived with a cold drizzle that turned the city lights into soft blurs. The Cole Foundation ballroom shimmered with gold and white. Crystal chandeliers hung like captured rain, and photographers lined the red carpet outside. It was Ethan's annual event, the one that drew every investor, politician, and journalist in Manhattan. Lena waited in the car as the driver opened her door. The gown she wore was deep emerald silk, chosen by Ethan's assistant but adjusted by her own hands to make it modest and comfortable. She stepped out carefully, heart pounding at the flashes of cameras nearby. For the first time in years, she felt seen not as a struggling single mother, not as a temporary hire, but as someone who belonged, even if it was just pretend. Ethan met her at the entrance, tall and calm in a tailored tuxedo. "You look incredible," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I look terrified," she whispered back. He smiled. "That too. But mostly incredible." They entered together, and all eyes turned toward them. Ethan greeted guests effortlessly, shaking hands, exchanging practiced smiles. Lena stood beside him, following his lead, careful not to reveal how foreign this world felt. When a journalist approached, microphone in hand, Lena froze. "Mr. Cole," the woman said brightly, "we have heard rumors that you have been secretly married for months. Can you confirm that this lovely lady is your wife?" Ethan glanced at Lena, then at the reporter. "Yes," he said simply, "and I could not be luckier." The cameras flashed like lightning. Lena forced a smile, her cheeks burning. Inside, as the orchestra began to play, Ethan guided her toward the dance floor. The room glowed with soft gold light, the air warm with perfume and champagne. His hand rested gently at her waist as they began to move. "You did not have to say that," she murmured. "I know," he replied, but it was the truth in the moment. For a while neither spoke. The music carried them, and the world seemed to fade around them. But then a familiar voice sliced through the calm. "Well, well, Ethan Cole actually brought someone this time." They turned. Standing near the edge of the dance floor was a woman in a scarlet gown, tall, polished, confident, the kind of beauty that turned heads without trying. "Clara," Ethan said, his tone cool, "I did not expect to see you here." "I could say the same," she replied smoothly, her gaze sliding to Lena. "And who is this? Your latest project?" Lena stiffened. Ethan's hand tightened at her back. "This is my wife," he said evenly. Clara's lips curved in a sharp smile. "Of course she is. You always did love a good performance." She lifted her glass and walked away. Lena exhaled, trying to steady her breath. That was your ex, was it not? Ethan nodded once. Former business partner, too. She hates surprises. She hates you being happy, Lena said softly. He looked at her then, surprised by how easily she had read him. Something like that. Hours later, after speeches and endless polite laughter, Lena escaped to the balcony for fresh air. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening. She leaned on the railing, closing her eyes for a moment of quiet. Footsteps approached behind her. Ethan joined her, loosening his tie. You handled yourself perfectly, he said. I thought your ex was going to stab me with her manicure, Lena said dryly. He laughed softly. She might have tried, if not for the cameras. They stood side by side, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable. Finally, Ethan said, you were right before, about me being lonely. Lena turned to him. His expression was open, unguarded. You have everything people dream of, Ethan, but it means nothing if you have no one to share it with. He nodded slowly. And you? Do you have someone? She hesitated. I have Noah. That is enough. Sometimes, he said, even the strongest people need more than enough. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting second, it felt real, too real. The air thickened with something unspoken. Then Ethan stepped back, clearing his throat. We should go. Tomorrow is another performance. Lena smiled faintly. I thought you were getting used to pretending. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. That is exactly what worries me. As they walked away, the city lights reflected in the marble floor like a second world beneath their feet, one made of truth hiding under layers of make-believe. And somewhere between those reflections, both of them wondered quietly how much longer they could keep pretending. The following week, the Cole mansion was filled with the noise of reporters and camera crews. The gala had been a success, raising millions for the foundation, and the press could not stop talking about Ethan's mysterious wife. The photo of them on the dance floor had gone viral, her hand on his chest, his gaze soft and protective. Lena stood by the window of the guest room, scrolling through her phone. Her name was everywhere, even though she had never given a single interview. Some articles praised her grace, others speculated she was a gold digger. It was dizzying, the way the world could invent a story overnight. When she heard footsteps behind her, she turned. Ethan entered quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. I thought you could use this, he said. She accepted the cup. Do you always have this many people watching your life? Always, he replied. But this time, it feels different. How so? Because for the first time I actually care what one person thinks. She met his eyes, unsure how to respond. He looked exhausted, but there was warmth in his tone that had not been there before. I never thanked you, he continued, for handling all of this with such dignity. Lena smiled faintly. I am a mother. Dignity is all I have left some days. Ethan studied her for a moment, then spoke carefully. There is something I want to show you. Meet me tonight at the office, after everyone leaves. That evening she arrived at the towering Cole Holdings building, unsure what to expect. The lobby gleamed with marble and glass. The receptionist waved her through, clearly under strict instructions. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Ethan was waiting beside a long hallway lit by warm golden lamps. Come in, he said, leading her into his office. The space was vast. The city spread beneath the windows like a galaxy. On his desk lay a small folder. I wanted you to see this, he said. Inside were documents, charity grants, housing projects, scholarship plans. At the top of the folder, the Noah Initiative. Lena looked up, stunned. You named it after my son? Ethan nodded. It is a project to provide education and housing for single parents. You inspired it. She felt tears rise, unexpected and unstoppable. Ethan, you did not have to. I wanted to, he said simply. You reminded me that money means nothing if it cannot change someone's life. For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of gratitude and something deeper hanging between them. Finally, she whispered, You are making it very hard to remember this is not real. Ethan's voice softened. Maybe it does not have to stay fake. Before she could answer, the office phone rang, sharp and sudden. Ethan reached for it, listened, and his expression changed. The warmth drained from his face. Ethan, she asked. He hung up slowly. That was the board. Clara just leaked our contract to the media. Lena's heart dropped. She what? She told the press that our marriage is a business arrangement, Ethan said, his tone grim. They have the documents. Everything. Lena's breath caught. So, this is it. The truth comes out. He looked at her, regret and frustration flashing in his eyes. I will fix this, Lena, I promise. But she already knew that some things could not be fixed, not easily, not after the whole world decided what story it wanted to believe. Outside the window, the lights of New York flickered against the glass. And for the first time since she had met Ethan Cole, Lena wondered if pretending had finally gone too far. The morning after the scandal broke, Lena woke to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. Dozens of messages, missed calls, and headlines filled the screen. Her picture with Ethan was plastered across every news outlet. Fake marriage scandal at Cole Holdings. Her stomach twisted as she scrolled through the comments. Some called her a fraud. Others used crueler words. She dressed quickly and took the subway to work, praying no one would recognize her. But the whispers started the moment she walked in. Her manager pulled her aside, face pale and apologetic. "Lena, I am sorry. We cannot have this kind of attention right now. Corporate is under investigation. You are on unpaid leave until things settle." She nodded, too numb to argue. Outside, cold wind whipped through the streets, carrying the echo of her own thoughts. The contract that had once seemed like a lifeline now felt like a noose. By the time she reached her apartment, reporters were waiting outside the building. Microphones, cameras, questions shouted over one another. "Miss Brooks, did you marry Ethan Cole for money? Is it true you signed a contract to play his wife?" She froze until a familiar black car pulled to the curb. Ethan stepped out, ignoring the flash of cameras, his voice low but firm. "That is enough. Leave her alone." He guided her into the car and shut the door before anyone could follow. Inside, Lena stared out the window. "You should not have come. They will twist this even more." "I do not care," he said. "You do not deserve to face this alone." She turned to him, her voice trembling. "You promised me privacy, Ethan. Now everyone knows. My son's school called this morning. They want me to keep Noah home until the attention dies down." Guilt flickered across his face. "I am so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." She shook her head. "You meant well, but you do not understand what it is like to be powerless. One headline and everything I built disappears." He was quiet for a long time, then said, "Let me make this right. I will hold a press conference. I will take the blame." Lena blinked. "What will you even say?" "The truth," he said simply. "That you did not do this for money. That it started as a contract, but you showed me what honesty and courage look like. If I lose the company, then so be it." She stared at him, unable to speak. "You would risk everything for that?" Ethan's gaze softened. "I have already risked everything. I just did not realize it until I met you." That evening, the Cole Holdings auditorium was filled with cameras once again. Ethan stood at the podium, every eye on him. Lena watched from backstage, heart racing. He began calmly. "The rumors are true," he said. "I asked Lena Brooks to pretend to be my wife, to protect my mother's health. I never intended to deceive the public, but in the process I learned something about myself. I learned that authenticity cannot be bought or scripted, and if you must blame someone, blame me, not her." The room erupted in questions, flashes, and voices. But for a brief second, Lena saw something in the crowd respect. Not from everyone, but from enough. When it ended, Ethan walked off the stage, his composure fading. "Well," he said, half smiling, "I guess that is one way to ruin a reputation." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You did not ruin it. You redeemed it." Outside, reporters swarmed, but their tone had changed. They shouted about courage, about truth. Somewhere between the chaos and the noise, Lena realized the contract that had started as a lifeline had become something entirely different, a mirror reflecting who they truly were. That night, as she tucked Noah into bed, she whispered softly, "We will be fine, sweetheart." But her mind kept replaying Ethan's words, "Authenticity cannot be bought or scripted." And for the first time since this all began, she dared to believe it. 2 days after the press conference, the storm had not yet passed. Cole Holdings' stock price dipped, investors panicked, and journalists camped outside the company gates. But inside the boardroom, Ethan stood his ground. The meeting was tense. 12 board members sat in silence as the chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole," he said coldly, "you have damaged the company's reputation. Shareholders are furious. Clara Jennings has presented evidence that you misused company resources to fund a personal arrangement. That is grounds for dismissal." Ethan's hands rested on the table, calm but firm. "I used my own money, and I have already released the records to prove it." Clara smirked from across the room. "That may be true, but perception matters more than facts. The press will destroy what you built." Ethan turned to face her. "You are the one who leaked the contract. You endangered my mother's health and a woman who never asked for this. I will not let you twist it into something it is not." Clara's voice dripped with disdain. Do not pretend this is about morality, Ethan. You could have had everything, but you threw it away for a waitress with a sob story. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Ethan spoke quietly, every word deliberate. If integrity means losing everything, then I will lose it gladly. The chairman sighed. The vote is unanimous. You are relieved of your position as CEO. Effective. Immediately. Ethan nodded once, collected his papers, and left without another word. Outside the building, flashes from cameras exploded around him. Questions flew through the air. Is it true you were fired? Do you regret the relationship? Where is Lena Brooks now? He ignored them, walking straight to his car. For the first time in years, there was no driver, no assistant, no schedule, just silence. That evening, Lena opened her apartment door to find him standing in the hallway, soaked from the rain. His tie was gone, his expression raw. Ethan, she whispered, surprised. What are you doing here? I wanted you to hear it from me, he said. I lost the company. She stepped aside, letting him in. You did not have to come all this way just to tell me that. I did, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Because losing the company does not matter, but losing you would. Lena's breath caught. You do not mean that. You are exhausted. You need time. He shook his head. No, I have had nothing but time. Time to hide behind work, behind control, behind the idea that success would fill the emptiness. But it never did. Then you showed up, and for the first time, I felt like I was living a real life. She stared at him, torn between relief and fear. Ethan, I cannot be another rescue mission. I have spent my whole life trying to stand on my own. He stepped closer, his voice steady. Then let me stand beside you, not in front of you. I do not want to save you, Lena. I just want to be part of your world, the way you became part of mine. The rain outside softened, tapping gently against the window. Lena felt her defenses cracking, her heart aching with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Finally, she whispered, "What if we do not know how to start over?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we start from the truth." For a long moment, they simply stood there, two people stripped of status, pretense, and pride, real at last. And though the world outside still whispered scandal, the only thing Lena could hear was the quiet beat of possibility in the space between them. 3 weeks later, the headlines had finally faded. The world had moved on to a new scandal, a new name to dissect. For the first time in months, Lena could walk down the street without hearing whispers. Life had begun to quiet again. Yet in that quiet, she felt a strange ache, a mix of peace and longing. She was back at the community center where she volunteered before all of this began, teaching art classes for children. The laughter, the smell of paint, and the sight of little hands covered in color reminded her why she loved simple things. But sometimes, when she washed the brushes at the end of the day, she caught herself looking at the door, half expecting Ethan to walk in. That afternoon, as she was closing up, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was short. "There is something you should see. 7 p.m., City Gallery." Her heart skipped. She almost deleted it, thinking it might be a prank, but curiosity tugged at her. When she arrived, the gallery was dimly lit, nearly empty, except for one man standing in front of a large canvas near the center. Ethan turned when he heard her footsteps. "Lena," he said softly, "you came." "I was not sure I should," she admitted. "I thought you might be halfway around the world rebuilding your empire." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I am rebuilding something else." She looked around. The exhibit was titled "The Art of Second Chances." Paintings lined the walls, each piece inspired by small acts of kindness, moments of hope. And in the center, a large portrait stopped her breath. It was of her sitting at a table, light falling across her face, eyes filled with quiet determination. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Dedicated to Lena Brooks, the reason I learned what real love means." Her hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan, you did this?" He nodded. "I sold most of my shares in the company and used the proceeds to fund this project. Every painting was created by artists who received grants through the Noah initiative. Your strength started it all." She blinked back tears. "You could have just told me." "I wanted to show you," he said, stepping closer, "because words are easy. Actions are what matter." The room was silent except for the faint echo of music from another hall. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a simple silver ring, nothing like the extravagant jewelry she had seen in his world before. "This is not a contract," he said quietly. "No signatures, no deadlines. Just a promise that what we started, even by accident, can still become something true." Lena's voice trembled. You are asking me to try again? He smiled gently. I am asking you to stop pretending. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but her laugh broke through them. I should have known you would find a dramatic way to say that. He reached for her hand, his eyes steady. You once told me fake does not mean heartless. You were right, but I think we both deserve something real now. She looked at the ring, then at him, and for once there was no fear, no hesitation, just the quiet certainty that love built on truth did not need perfection, it needed courage. As she nodded, the gallery lights dimmed, and the soft glow of the city streamed through the windows. In that golden light, the two of them stood together, no longer pretending, but beginning again, this time for real. A year later, spring sunlight spilled across the small courtyard of the new community art center. Children ran through the open doors carrying paintbrushes and paper, their laughter echoing against the brick walls. A bronze plaque by the entrance read, "The Colbrooks Foundation for Families and Art Education." Beneath it, a smaller line said, "Built on kindness, not contracts." Inside, Lena adjusted a set of framed photos on the wall, one from the first Noah Initiative project, one from the gallery exhibit, and one from their quiet wedding day 6 months ago. She smiled as she fixed the last frame. In it, Ethan knelt beside her and Noah, all three laughing as sunlight poured through the trees. Ethan entered then, rolling his sleeves and holding 2 cups of coffee. You still cannot stop organizing everything, can you? She turned and grinned. I just like things where they belong. He handed her a cup. So do I. He looked around the bright space, pride flickering in his eyes. Can you believe this place used to be a warehouse? Lena nodded. Now it is full of life. You kept your promise. He reached for her hand. We both did. For a moment, they stood in the center of the room, surrounded by color and light, the faint sound of Noah's laughter drifting in from outside. Everything felt simple, grounded, and real. There were no cameras, no headlines, no contracts, just the quiet joy of a love that had survived the noise. Ethan brushed a stray hair from her face. Do you remember what you told me that night at the wedding? Lena laughed softly. That I wanted dessert? He smiled. Yes, and I never did buy it for you. He set down his cup and pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a single chocolate truffle wrapped in gold foil. She shook her head, laughing. You remembered? I remember everything, he said. Especially the moment you made pretending feel real. Her eyes glistened. It was never about pretending, Ethan. It was about finding someone who saw me, even when the world did not. He leaned closer. And now? Now, she said, smiling through her tears, I see you too. Outside, the children's laughter grew louder as they painted on the courtyard walls bright strokes of blue, gold, and green, spelling the words, Hope lives here. Ethan and Lena stepped into the sunlight, fingers entwined. The past had tested them, the world had doubted them, but love had chosen them anyway. And as the afternoon light bathed the center in warmth, it was clear that the story that began with pretending had finally found its truth. Because sometimes, the most beautiful beginnings start with a single impossible lie that leads 2 hearts to something real.